Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this is About East Brunswick. Our topic tonight is a topic that should be of interest to everybody, and that is water. Where do we get it? How good is it? And what are our plans for the future? To help me talk about water this evening, I have three guests who are very active in water in East Brunswick and who play important roles in the provision of water to our residents. Immediately to my right is Walter Sinnott, who's the Senior Vice President with Hazen & Sawyer, engineering consultants. To his right is Eugene Price, Chairman of the Water Policy Committee. And to his right is Lou Neely, who is Director of Finance for the Township and also has overall responsibility for the operation of our water utility in East Brunswick. And I'd like to direct my first question to Lou to describe for you and for us how we do provide water in East Brunswick and under what kind of mechanism do we do that.
Well, Mayor, the water utility is exactly that. It's a utility, which takes the word utilitarian. Those people who use the water pay for the water. If you don't have a well, if you don't have the connection to the water system, you have a well, then you pay nothing for it. And a taxpayer who may have a well or a farm but doesn't use the system does not pay for the water. Water is completely paid for by water customers. Now, as a utility, it's still part of the municipal government, only a separate, distinct division within the municipal government, and it has three divisions in it. One is the meter division, which puts the meters in and bills for water. There's a production division, which produces the water and transmits it to the home. And there's the maintenance division, which will repair the lines or make sure that there's no problem with hydrants, which are frequently hit by cars. They're repaired and put back in service.
Now, Lou, I know I used to get confused about this before I became involved in government. We hear the terms, particularly in some of our surrounding towns, a municipal utilities authority. Now, is what we have one of those, or is it something different?
It is something different, and there's probably about 6 or 7 terms that one could hear. There's municipal utilities authorities, sewage authorities, water authorities, and a combination of those. Authorities are independently appointed bodies that have the power to set rates, to raise bonding or capital formation without the approval of the governing body. A utility is completely controlled by the municipal council and the mayor, and so that it's not independent, it is responsive, and it is not an overlapping term. The people are municipal employees that are appointed by the personnel policies of the township as opposed to an independent agency.
Is there a particular reason why a utility is desirable as opposed to simply charging for water in the general tax rate?
Yes, I think that there's a number of reasons. Number one is not everybody uses water.
Let me stop you there. You mean not everybody in East Brunswick is connected to the municipal water supply?
That's right. 98% of the people in East Brunswick are connected to our supply, and we provide water to 98% of the residents and about 99% of the commercial and industrial segments. But there are some industries that have their own wells, and there are some homeowners that have their own wells, and they produce and treat their own water, and they're not part of the utility.
Ah, good. Okay, I'd like to now turn to Gene Price and ask him a little bit about this thing called actually the Water Policy Advisory Committee. Gene, you're chairman of that, is that correct?
That's right.
Could you tell us something about the Water Policy Advisory Committee and what it does and who's on it?
Sure. Well, Mayor Fox set up the Water Policy Advisory Committee made up of citizens of the township about 5 years ago. And basically, originally, we were to make sure that the township had sufficient quantities of water and of high quality, the best that was available. From that, our whole makeup expanded a bit to monitor actually the water utility itself. And by monitoring, I mean we look at its budget, we look at its functioning, we look what it does to expand, that make sure that it is going to follow through and cover the expansions and the improvements that were set out to be in the projections in the past. and to make our own projections for the future. Now, the committee itself is made up of several people. The mayor, of course, is a member of it, along with Lou Neely and Mike Opoleski, who actually is responsible for the running of the utility itself. There's also members from Hazen and Sawyer as advisors and consultants. Then there's 9 citizen members who are basically appointed by the mayor. And presently, we have, I'd like to read those people's name: David Spector, Bill Stockton, Dennis Wozniewski, Wayne Lyons, Joan Abramowitz, Ted Shelton, Ed Rella, and recently Gay Hickey has resigned, and we have an opening, Mayor, and maybe you would like to say something about it, so we could get some people who are interested, perhaps would like to fill this spot.
By year end. The people who are on the committee, do they have any particular backgrounds that are useful in the work of the committee?
Well, there are various backgrounds. Myself, I'm a registered professional engineer in New Jersey, and there are people who are housewives and citizens who are from various different professions, accountants. Again, what I said before, when we monitor the budget, we usually like to have a CPA on the committee so that he knows what he's looking at when he talks to Lou Neely. And we have that. And various people from the fire departments in the township, who, of course, are very interested in water and its supply and what have you. And Dr. Shelton, who is very interested from the state down to our township in the quality of water, and has been a great help from our inception in making sure that we get the right quality as well as the quantity.
Good. Now, Walt, why don't you tell us something about what Hazen and Sawyer does for East Brunswick, and how long you've been doing it, and what kinds of things are happening currently?
Bill, it seems like we've been doing this for a long time, probably over 20 years. When we first started working for the township, we've been preparing the master plans, which master plans include the transmission systems and the storage and the pumping within the town water system. Other parts of the master plan is where to secure the supply of water, whether it be groundwater or purchased water supply. Our most recent general master plan was done in 1977 and 78. In 1983, we did another study to compare the purchase of water from Middlesex and Elizabethtown Water Company. We've done a design of various facilities over the years. The most current project was based on the studies in 1983, looking at both the Elizabethtown and the Middlesex supply. A decision was made by the township at the recommendation of the advisory committee to purchase water from the Middlesex Water Company filtration plant, and we have a map here which we can look at.
Okay, I'll come back to
Sure,
that in
okay.
a minute. Before we get to that, we have an engineering department in the township. We have a township engineer. We have civil engineers on the staff. Why is it necessary that we employ a consultant in this area?
Well, Bill, I believe that the field of water supply, like many engineering fields today, are so specialized that requires particular special detailed knowledge of that particular field. And while you would have most townships and even large cities would have general civil engineering and municipal engineering staffs, they really can't afford to have full-time staff to design specialized water facilities.
Now, is Hazen and Sawyer 2 guys in a garage plus you, or?
No. Hazen Sawyer is a firm of approximately 220 people. We work for municipalities and industries, for the states. We're doing work for the state of New Jersey right now. In many of the large cities in the East Coast, we design their water supply and transmission and distribution facilities.
Ah, good. Now, I do know that Hazen and Sawyer was selected by the state to study the water supply situation in the South River Basin, which includes East Brunswick, and many of the surrounding towns and towns all the way into Monmouth County. And I know that other people have seen the construction of some sort of pipeline coming by Sears and across the Raritan River and along the river. And maybe not everybody knows that that's our pipeline that you designed, that the Water Policy Advisory Committee selected the source for, and that Lou recommended the financing for. But the question comes to mind, why do we need that? Is that traditionally East Brunswick and other towns have relied on groundwater, groundwater being water that's pumped out of the ground. Why can't we just pump some more water out of the ground instead of having to run an expensive pipeline up to Middlesex Water Company, which is all the way in Edison?
Bill, there are several reasons. The groundwater supply is very limited in this area, and there have been tremendous demands on the groundwater supply by all of the municipalities and industries who have tapped that groundwater supply. And actually, based on studies by the United States Geological Survey looking at what the capabilities of the underground supply are, they have determined that the underground supplies have been overdrafted in this entire South River Basin.
What does that mean, overdrafted?
What it means is that groundwater supplies are recharged by drainage from the surface, which percolates back into the ground. When you take out more from the ground and percolates back into the ground, the general groundwater table declines. As that groundwater table declines, the tidal areas, which include the brackish water in the Raritan Bay, start to migrate into the general groundwater supply and contaminates that supply with brackish water. Mm-hmm. So the people with the wells along the coastal areas end up with water supplies that can no longer be used because the groundwater has been pulled down and the salt water migrates into that groundwater supply. And that has happened in this area. Mm-hmm. As a result of it, the state has said, we have to stop that. They have ordered this, declared this area as a critical area. There's a line which just roughly comes down through East Brunswick and runs south. All areas east of that, out to the coast, are in what is known as a critical area. And they have declared that the municipalities and industries using water in that critical area, in most of the aquifers, have to decrease their withdrawal from the groundwater by 50%. And by decreasing that withdrawal by 50% within the next few years, they will expect that that will get it back to what the safe capabilities of that groundwater supply are.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we can refer to the map for a minute, the water line that is essentially completed is coming down from the Middlesex Water Company filtration plant, which is located in Edison, comes down along the Conrail tracks, along the river, actually crosses underneath the Raritan River near the Rutgers Boathouse, and then through the Douglas campus and just behind Sears, and then along Riders Lane to our existing pumping station at Tice's Lane. Now, how big is that? Let me turn to Gene for a minute. How big is that pipeline?
The pipeline, Mayor, is 36 inches in diameter. This was discussed in our committee at quite length. We went from 20 on up to 42 and argued back and forth for a while until we came out to cost-wise with input from Hazen and Russell and Sawyer, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Input on costs and the different engineering functions and construction that we would face. We came up and decided that the 36-inch was the right size to give us maximum water that we would ever need way through the year 2000.
Now, one of you, whoever has the answer, how long is this pipeline?
About 15,000 feet, 15,500 to be exact.
So that's nearly 3 miles.
Nearly 3 miles, yes.
And how much is it costing?
The total cost of that project, including the engineering and so forth, is about less than $3.5 million, about $3.4 million.
Now, I know that the state has suggested that there be a connection, another connection to Middlesex Water Company for the towns, other towns affected by this cutback in groundwater withdrawal, which is represented by the red line on the map. And what's the estimated cost of that?
Well, the estimated cost of that pipeline itself is better than $20 million, Mr. Mayor. There are other things involved besides the pipeline itself that Middlesex would probably have to construct connections to it at the north end of it and expand their water treatment plant. But basically, the pipeline itself is, I believe, about $22 million.
Mm-hmm. And the other improvements come to?
The other improvements, depending on the treatment plant projects and the various improvements, some of those projects get as high as, I believe, $50 million.
And the towns who draw water from that are going to have to pay for it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, Gene, we didn't, did the decision to build the pipeline come from the recent action of the state?
No, we planned on this right from the start. When the committee was first formed by yourself back in 1980, we were looking at the quantity of water that we would need through the year 2000, and we found that we would need more than actually what we could get from New Brunswick today. So we looked for other sources to procure our water from, and we considered not only Middlesex Water but Elizabethtown, staying with New Brunswick, or building a pipeline and a new plant by ourselves, as well as going along on a combined for the whole area with other townships in the area. This was taken up by a committee that was headed by Mayor Fox some time, and I know I personally attended one of those meetings, and I came out of feeling that if we're going to wait for all these townships to get together, we'll never do anything, or it'll be 10, 12 years, it'll be too late. So fortunately, East Brunswick went along by ourselves, and we decided what we were going to do, and we did it, and here we are today really in good shape for water quality and quantity.
Just as an aside, that was the South River Basin Implementation Task Force, which I did chair, and to try to help the county convey to the municipalities downstream that they were going to have a problem, because all the county projections said that in the 85, 86, 87 time frame, they would be short of water. And nobody listened. Nobody was willing to do anything. Here they are today, confronted not only with the problem that was foreseen then, but with the additional problem of the 50% reduction in their water supply, which is unfortunate, I think, for the people in those communities. But I gather that the Water Policy Committee believes, and certainly I believe, that our water supply is assured for some time now.
Yes, our water basically comes from the Spruce Run Round Valley reservoir system through the Delaware and Raritan Canal, where we have rights to take the water from. It's pumped out of there for us by Middlesex and treated by Middlesex, and will be brought into the township for our use.
Mm-hmm. Now, Lou, this is an expensive pipeline. Is this going to cause rates to go up?
Well, Mayor, $3 million is an expensive pipeline, but no, it's not going to cause rates to go up, at least not in the foreseeable future. The foreseeable future is definitely within the next 2 years, and I think 3 years, given proper planning, we can hold the rates for 3 years. Mm-hmm. The last rate increase was the beginning of 1983, and if we hold it for 3 more years, that'll be 7 years that the rates will have remained stable and will have not increased.
Now, Gene or Walt, did we need this additional water for growth, or was it needed for the people already here?
Well, there are several reasons. You needed the additional water. First of all, with the contract with New Brunswick ends in this December 31st, 1985. So you had to replace the New Brunswick supply. You will have to replace the loss of the well supply because of the 50% decrease promulgated by the state government. And you have normal growth in the town. You've had steady growth over the years. So it's really the combined factors of source of supply, decrease in groundwater allocation, and general population growth.
There was, let me add something here. There was also a problem during the summer months where we get highs in water usage on days when everybody is out watering their lawn. We have no rain for 2 weeks, and you know how it gets in July or in August when it gets hot. Everyone's going to water their lawn and do it at the same time, and we've had problems. And on those days, we needed more water than we actually had available. And this was another reason for wanting to, again, get access to sufficient quantities.
How much water do we deliver on an average day during the year?
For something like 4 million
That's about right, about 4 million gallons per day.
And on a peak day in the summer, how much would that be?
Peaks are as high as 8 or 9, I believe.
We have a
up.
demand for a draw at times that if we were to draw out that demand all day long, 25 million gallons, but we've peaked out at 13 million gallons taken during any one day. So from an average of 4 and taking 13 million gallons at a draw rate, or means that as many spigots were open, we're taking it at a rate of 25 million gallons per day, is just was incredible, and it was virtually impossible, given our current supply, to meet that need.
As I recall, Walt, those excessive instantaneous demands, or those instantaneous demands, are somewhat in excess of standard design parameters for water systems.
Yes, now some of those instantaneous demands are, part of the instantaneous demands are met from storage in the tank. So that's not, in other words, you don't have to meet the entire demand by drawing from Middlesex and from your wells. You do meet a significant part of that instantaneous demands from storage. Looking at the demand figures, the maximum days, the 5 consecutive days in 1983 range from 8.6 million gallons per day up to 9.6 million gallons per day for 5 consecutive days, which is quite a significant draft. So you do have certainly upwards of 10 million gallons a day on a steady day-in, day-out basis.
All right,
And the rest would be met from storage.
Okay, I want to turn from demand for a minute to quality. And water is a very complicated topic, as it turns out, and I hope we don't run out of time. But, Gene, I'd like to ask you, I know that the committee's been very concerned about water quality. I also know that there are areas of our community where people routinely drink bottled water because they feel that somehow it's not safe to drink our local water. Could you comment a little bit on what the committee has done and how the committee feels about the quality of our water?
Well, the committee monitors very closely the tests that are run by the township. We get reports in our meetings. By the way, the committee meets once a month on usually the last Wednesday of the month. And we get reports from the township, from the water utility on the quality of water. Every time they have tests, we get copies of the test results to see, and we question very closely where we can see things going up that shouldn't be. But I must say I'm amazed in that the results have shown remarkably well within all the limitations that are required. One of the big things that we put a lot of emphasis on was odor, smell, and taste in the water. And perhaps the people in the north end of town where the water comes from New Brunswick, it hasn't been as good as from the wells. And this is one of the things that I think will definitely be improved once we're hooked up to Middlesex next year.
Now, why don't you say a little bit about what led us to Middlesex, and then after that we want to show some tape that was made at the Middlesex Water Company plant that deals with how they handle quality there.
All right. When the Water Committee was trying to make a decision, we toured not only the present New Brunswick plant, where we are presently getting water from, but we also toured the Elizabethtown plant and the Middlesex plant. We found that the Middlesex plant was perhaps the most modern, up-to-date, very clean, and almost like night and day compared to the New Brunswick plant, which is quite old. We were very impressed with the people there. We were impressed with how they handle the water, with the test results, how they monitor the quality of the water, with their capabilities, and along with the costs, of course, which is, I guess, the bottom line in anything. We were very happy to settle with Middlesex.
Okay. Mike Opaleski, who is Deputy Director of Public Works and Water Resources and also is responsible for the operation of the water utility in terms of maintenance and the operation of our filter plants, visited Middlesex Water Company this week, and at this particular point in the program we'd like to show you that videotape that will describe something about how they monitor the water and how they test the water and what they do to it.
We're here now in the major control center of Middlesex Water's treatment plant. With me is the Assistant Superintendent, Greg Dubiel, who's going to explain what is presently going on within this facility by virtue of the panel that you see behind us. Once we go through the panel, we will actually get into the operation of the plant by going into the filtering galley where the actual water is filtered, and we'll see. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Dubiel, so Mr. Dubiel can explain what's going on and how the plant is run. Mr. Dubiel.
Good evening. Currently, what you're looking at is the control panel, which is staffed 24 hours a day by an operator and his assistant. It's the nerve center of the operation, which handles all radio, telephone communications, and also monitors the treatment plant and support facilities. The unique characteristics of the control room is that it constantly monitors the system levels, pump conditions, and status changes of any equipment, so that in an emergency, corrective action can be taken immediately. Besides the operators, we have a support staff of on-call personnel who would be called in upon an emergency to make any necessary repairs or adjustments.
Okay. Greg, since you've been here, since you've been working in the plant, have there ever been an emergency that your staff hasn't been able to handle, where there was a problem either with quality or the quantity of water coming out of the facility?
Now, the staff really prides itself in that. We've had a very good record for many years. I can't think of any since my time or any that I've seen recorded. We really pride ourselves in that.
Okay. We spoke about the panel in back of us. Can you explain some of the unique things about the panel and why you have the gauges, the different type of gauges and switches that we're looking at?
Okay. First off, we have a graphics panel depicting various areas of the treatment plant and the stages of process that take place. To start off with, we have a filter console that an operator could automatically wash a filter at a specific point in time, fully controlling it with rate setters. They can adjust valves from the control room to maintain levels and flow characteristics in the system. They could also make pump changes, start up a 100 horsepower well that'll produce over 1 million gallons of water away from the plant in South Plainfield, and know that it has turned on, or if it had shut off due to a power interruption or failure. So
what you're saying is that no matter what goes on in any area, your service area, as large as it may be, it's all monitored through this panel, and at an instantaneous moment, you know the characteristics that are going on in your system as well as the treatment cycle. So you always have assurance in regards to quality.
Yes, that's correct. We also, as far as the distribution system, it's monitored constantly also on various points of the system that are critical, and we can pick up various main breaks, hydrant openings, whatever, and the operators can make necessary adjustments or contact necessary personnel if required.
Okay. How about we go into your filter gallery and take a look at how the water is processed, and maybe the people understand why the gauges are here, as well as why you have operators on duty 24 hours a day.
Okay.
We're now here in the filtering bay of the Middlesex Water Company treatment plant, and what we're going to do is we're going to have Greg explain to us what actually is going on here, and I'm going to ask him a few questions on how the plant operates. Greg, could you explain what's presently going on within the filtering bay?
Okay. This is one of the many processes of the water treatment plant. It's filtering settled water whereas currently we're undergoing a major modification of all our filters to increase their capacity and the upkeep of water treatment standards by the state and federal governments.
Greg, on the upgrading of the filters, I know you're putting in an anthracite. Now this handles a higher quality to give you a higher degree of purification on the water. But doesn't it also reduce some of the cost? You can process more water through the filter, so you're actually reducing your costs, but increasing quantities of water that can come across the filters?
That is correct. Our current filter media is a sand media, sand and gravel media. This will be now termed as a mixed media, and it has double the flow rate characteristics and also increases the hours of service between filter washing.
So you can produce more water for a less amount of money, so to speak, on what you're doing.
That's correct. So the initial cost would be there, but the payback would be relatively quick.
Great. Quality assurance. How do you know what you're doing here from a quality standpoint meets all the standards? Is there someone within staff that you have here that you would like to introduce us to that can go through on the quality?
Yes, we do have Joe Ritter, who's superintendent of treatment, who's within the plant, has a laboratory which he works out of.
Does he have a staff that's on call 24 hours a day as well as your own staff?
Yes, like my department, he also has staff that will respond within a moment's notice.
I think we should go to the lab and see how exactly the quality assurance is done at Middlesex. We're here now with Mr. Joseph Ritter, Superintendent of Treatment of Middlesex Water Company, and we're in his laboratory, which is in the water treatment plant. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ritter to explain some of the operation of his lab and the quality assurance of the quality of the water going out. And Mr. Ritter will handle that, I know, very well. Joe?
Good evening. My name is Joe Ritter. I'm Superintendent of Treatment here at Middlesex Water Company. This laboratory is a quality control lab. What that means is we monitor the process of the water as it comes in, goes through the treatment process, and as it leaves the plant. Part of the laboratory functions, the laboratory workers who work here are also samplers. They will go upstream on the canal, approximately 5 days worth, to sample the different sections of the canal to find out what the water looks like coming into the plant before it ever gets here. This way we are well prepared for anything that may come into the treatment plant. We also sample the water as it comes into the plant, as it goes through the process, and as it leaves the plant. After it leaves the plant, we go out into our system. We sample at different points in our system, approximately 175 samples a month throughout the system. Each one of these samples are analyzed for different parameters as set by the state and federal limits, and also by the limits that we set here for ourselves in the company. Middlesex Water Company does have its own set of limits that have no bearing on federal or state regs. They are a little more stricter because we're proud of the quality of the water we produce. The workers who work here also are proud of the water that they produce and want to assure the best quality possible to our customers. The workers here are also responsible in the laboratory for checking our system to ensure the water quality of it as it reaches the customer's house. In doing this, we also do well checks on our system, the wells that we have that also feed to the system, on our tanks, on interconnections with other utilities. We do have those. We sell water and we can purchase water from other utilities. We also have the facilities and the personnel to check possible cross connections with industry and with private homes. People who have their own private wells could be possibly cross-connected with us, and we do get into the homes and check for this at all times. The testing that we use here are basically those that are recommended by the state and the federal government. We test for the physical parameters, the color, the aesthetic values, turbidity, taste, odor, bacteriological quality. We test for the various metals as set forth by the federal government, plus other ones that they don't have standards for as yet. And we do organic testing here in our plant and out in the system. That is, we pick up samples to have them tested for the different organic contaminants that may be present, the different solvents or pesticides that may be present. These samples are all checked on a routine basis, more frequently than is required by law, and then we send the results to the state, and we also keep copies here.
Joe, you made a comment about going out to the canal before the water ever gets to the plant, like 5 days ahead. What would be the reason to do work out in the canal before the water got to your plant? Is there a reason that you're ahead of yourself, so to speak, on why you want to know what's coming down to you?
Well, we always have to be prepared for what's coming at us. This is a surface water treatment plant, and being such, the water quality coming into the plant will vary. The variations are caused by runoff from storms, etc., that we may see coming down the canal. By going upstream the 12, 15, 20 miles to the different sampling points, we have a good picture of what's happening before the water ever comes in. And if there are problems or if specialized treatment or anything is needed, then we can take effective action. If the water is of unacceptable quality, we ask the state to get rid of it and get us new water, fresh water.
So you communicate that to Mr. Dubiel's operation and his staff level so they can gear the plant to the quality, and if there has to be a chemical change to treat the water better or so on. So you have a cross-communication with Mr. Dubiel and his staff.
Yes, we do have that cross-communication ability. We are all on duty 24 hours a day, so if things do crop up one way or another quality-wise, they can contact a person here in the laboratory, and they will monitor the canal. The laboratory is staffed, by the way, Mike, 365 days out of the year. Laboratory personnel are available on call 24 hours a day.
You made a very good point, which I like to emphasize, is that in regards to what Mr. Ritter was saying in regards to federal and state standards, that their own company has set higher standards in some area. And this is the pride that we see within the company as we've gone through it, if you notice, the cleanliness of the company, the atmosphere that you have here, and the individuals and the equipment that they're working with. Our dealings with Middlesex Water Company has always been of a very high caliber. And as you see with the staff personnel and what Mr. Ritter is saying just emphasizes it, that their own staff has taken on their ability to raise standards to give our higher purity water. And that's where we're saying to go out in front of the plant to know what's coming down. Is there anything else you can tell us about the quality in relationship to Middlesex, what Middlesex has done, where you have done quality testing for corrosiveness? I know there was an article in one of the tech magazines that you got a great deal of credit for.
Middlesex Water Company is one of the innovators or original users of corrosion control treatment, Mike. As you mentioned, we did have articles in the journal, and we have given papers at national conferences on corrosion control and corrosion monitoring in the plant and throughout the system. We use a specific type of corrosion inhibitor here in the plant to ensure that our mains are protected and that our customers are protected. Corrosion products these days can cause quality problems in the system, discolored water, etching of pipes, etc., etc. And by using this product, we have minimized it, has cut down greatly on the type of quality problems that once occurred in the past.
Would you say your operation also fits in very nicely with Mr. Dubiel, where he stated that the reason that the anthracite is being added to the filters is that he can increase production of water but still maintain a high quality? And what you're saying also is that with the corrosion control and the monitoring and the quality assurance that you have within your lab, you're putting out a very high grade of water, but you're still maintaining a very low cost level.
We are trying to provide the best possible water at the lowest possible cost, Mike, yes. This new type of filter that we're putting in, we have two of them that have been used for years here, and we are very comfortable with them. The quality of water they produce is exceptional. We can get more water through a filter at the same quality as the other type of filters. It will also give us longer filter runs, and all in all, if you can produce more water through a filter with a longer filter run, it'll cut down on your costs eventually. It'll keep the water quality there, but give us more water to produce for the customers.
Thank you, Joe, for that good overview of the entire operation of Middlesex Water Company. And I'd like to extend the appreciation of the Township of East Brunswick to all the staff time that you have to put in, and Mr. Dubiel, and as Mr. Tompkins, I think your company is, again, the outstanding company for water supply in Middlesex County, and I hope our relationship for the next 30 years will be a very good one. And I thank you very much. Okay. And once again, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for being here tonight. And once again, I'm Michael J. Opoleski, Deputy Director of Public Works and Water Resources for the Township of East Brunswick. Good night now.
Part of About East Brunswick is to take questions from people who really aren't necessarily involved in the topics that we're discussing. And with us tonight in the studio is our guest audience, Paul Hansen, Mimi Wallen, Sandy Leone, and Cindy Hughes. And in this part of our program, we'd like to have whatever questions you have about what you've heard or anything else about water that's on your mind. Who'd like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Do you foresee the township continuing to be on odd even days in future summer months?
This was discussed in our committee. In fact, the committee was the place where the odd even, the thought came up and was decided upon. The idea is so that we don't have everybody watering their lawn at the same time and get these high peaks that were discussed of before. As long as we can maintain the water pressure throughout the township, and in the case of a fire or what have you, we don't need that. But during the high-use summer months, it has been a necessity in order to get enough water to enough places at the same time to do this. Whether or not we would need this in the future, maybe Lou would have a...
The answer is yes.
So it's not really a lack of water.
And it's sound economics. It's not a lack of water. But if we had to build the additional water towers behind your house and behind Paul's house and maybe behind your house to let everybody have water they want all the time, people wouldn't like that. But every other day is no problem. And plants won't die if you water them one day, hold off a day and water them the next day. So the money that's saved simply by not having all those towers is well worthwhile. And it's a plan that's built into our system. And we think it's sound economics as well as good water quality and sound environmental practices.
Yeah, to put it another way, has been related to me, we simply could not afford to build the distribution system necessary to supply water on demand whenever anybody wanted it. It isn't a question of supply. There's lots of water up in the hills in Round Valley and Spruce Run. It is a question of distribution. And beyond that, I think there's a question of conservation, because water is indeed a limited resource and one that needs to be conserved. But the basic motivation, I think, is economics in terms of the cost of building, as Lou says, the storage facilities, the distribution mains, and so on that you have to have. As somebody described it to me, if you can envision a pipe under the ground and there are holes in it, and you're trying to get water from one end to the other, except that those holes are where connected to people's houses and they turn on their spigots, and the more spigots you turn on, the more holes there are in the pipe, and the more water you've got to put in at some point to maintain the pressure to get it all the way down to the end. And having stood through a couple of water crises with the fire chiefs, watching the storage capability go down, watching pressure go to zero in certain areas of the community, that is not something we want to happen ever again in the future, I hope.
A question about that pressure that you're talking about with the building that's going on here in East Brunswick, and not wanting to build the water towers because of economics. How, I trust that it's built into the plan that we will have sufficient water pressure with the building that we have going on?
Walt?
Yes, that's correct. The distribution and transmission system and storage has been studied in the master plan, and provisions have been made to handle that future growth.
So without any additional building of water towers or for additional pressure?
No, I don't want to say that, because you know certainly water towers is something, as the town grows, you may have to add additional water towers. I don't think we'd want to say that that's it.
Yeah, in fact, the Water Master Plan indicates that at some point we'll need another 1.5 million gallons, I believe it is, of elevated storage, because that's really what maintains pressure in your system. But that's out at some point in the future.
I think we're 3 years away from that. Paul, there's two aspects. Pressure, we could have a real small line and be pushing water real hard and have a lot of pressure, and people still wouldn't have any flow. And so that what we've tried to balance is with adequate flow. That water line that's coming across the river and with our new connection with Middlesex will allow us to flow at any given time in a 24-hour period, 25 million gallons. And we'll only have a demand on an average basis of 4. So there's plenty of flow. And the pumps put pressure behind that. So we're going to both have adequate flow, adequate pressure, and I think it's going to meet the needs of the community, everyone's needs, on odd, even days.
I have a question. I'm a member of the Citizens Conservation Council, and We're concerned, since East Brunswick does draw some water from the ground, which means from the Old Bridge Sands aquifer, and as we were told before, the level of water in that aquifer is going down. We're concerned about whether development couldn't be limited on the intake area of the aquifer so that more water would go into the aquifer.
Yeah, well, I'll respond to that. We don't actually draw from the Old Bridge Sands in East Brunswick. We draw from the Farrington Sands, although Spotswood and Old Bridge and some other communities do draw from the Old Bridge. And indeed, we've done a number of tests to see if we could draw from the Old Bridge, and there isn't enough of the Old Bridge Sands in East Brunswick to be able to do that. By and large, the intake areas of the aquifer have been protected. Certainly in the case of the Farrington Sands, where the entire area west of the Turnpike in East Brunswick is mostly recharged for the Farrington. That has been limited to a minimum of 2-acre zoning, and rural preservation, and never any sewers, so that's been preserved. And then, of course, largely through Rose Sackel's efforts, but then later on, in cooperation with the township, Jamesburg Park was acquired by the county, and that is a major recharge area for the Old Bridge Sands. So I think that by and large, the recharge areas have been protected. I know that there are some people who feel that there should be further protection, but it again becomes a question of how far you can go in limiting development and stay within the law. And but certainly the prime areas of recharge have been protected within East Brunswick, and in the case of Jamesburg Park, into surrounding communities.
I'm concerned with the quality of the water in East Brunswick, and I'm wondering, when the water is monitored for quality at Middlesex or New Brunswick, wherever it's monitored, does it then become monitored in East Brunswick also? Do we do that daily, or don't we check the water at all?
Gene could address that.
Yes, we do our own monitoring, especially from the well water that we pump and treat ourselves right now in the Ruse Lane plant. But we do our own monitoring as well, and we do our own addition of chemicals and what have you as it comes in.
How often is that done?
We take 50 samples of water a week all over town, not only from the wells, but from the water that's purchased from New Brunswick. And so that randomly throughout the community, there are 50 samples taken a week which are monitored. In addition to that, we quarterly take 7 samples from around the community and have those run through the most sophisticated test for pesticides, volcanic VOCs, volatile organic chemicals, for any type of known carcinogenics that's available. And those tests are available, and they're filed right in the library, and there's a history of those for the last 3 years. And so every quarter, and we've not ever had a water quality problem. Now, the state requires you to do it once a year, and the federal government requires you to do it once a year. We do it 4 times a year, and those tests are much more extensive than ever required by any law, and they're available. And I really want to assure the people that, that water quality is one of our keen concerns, and that's one of the reasons we're going to Middlesex. But while we're waiting to go to Middlesex, we do monitor that. And those results are available, and I'm pleased to say that they are very positive results.
These are the results that are, again, are brought into our committee and are looked at by the committee and are questioned, and even the results of some of the tests that show that while they're way under the limits, if they've come off of basically 0 or nil, questions are usually raised and put to Mike and Lou about it, and the question is why?
Right.
Why is this, or why is it higher in this part of town than in that? Agreed that it's all well within the limits that are set by the state and the federal and what have you, but why is it higher over here than there? And we push them. We really push the township, and we have, our interests are your interests.
Good.
I have another question. When you were considering the Elizabethtown Water Company versus the Middlesex Water Company, did you look at the records as to the level of organic chemicals in each of those?
The base water supply for both Middlesex and for Elizabethtown, they use the same water supply source. And so if there's any chemicals in one, it'd be in the other. And what it really came down to then was their ability to treat the water, their ability to deliver the water, and their ability to give consistent quality. Middlesex does something that no other water company I'm familiar with, is by going 5 days upstream. And so they know what water is coming downstream, and every day they have a consistent water quality. Secondly, their plant is the most modern plant on the East Coast. And their ability to deliver is that they have redundancy built in that plant. So if one motor goes out, they have another like panel that kicks right on, and there's no chance of an emergency. That redundancy, that monitoring capability, and that modern technology was not available with Elizabethtown or with New Brunswick. And so the Citizens Committee really came out and said, quality is number one. We want that quality. Now let's see what it costs. And the nice thing to tell you is that starting January 1st, the water that we're going to purchase from Middlesex through that new water line is not going to cost us more. In fact, it's about $70 per million gallons less. Now that doesn't mean water rates are going down because we have a water line to pay for, but the cost of water and treating water is actually less because of the modern technology and the ability to do that. So there's some positive things that are happening. That's why we can hold the rate for another 2 years and possibly 3.
When you're speaking of costs, the cost that it is to have Hazen and Sawyer, sorry. Will we still have to pay for that, or will we no longer need the consultants after we have our water line and we're all set?
Well, what we do with Hazen and Sawyer is there is an annual retainer fee that we pay them because it is a very specialized field. And they meet monthly with the Water Policy Advisory Committee. They advise Mike Opaleski and others on things that come up in the system and how can we best manage the system. And then we contract with them on a case-by-case basis for design jobs like the water line for Middlesex or major main extensions or anything of that sort. But I think that as long as we have a water utility, we will need water engineers as consultants, and it is so specialized and requires such support that I don't foresee the time when we could do that entirely in-house because we don't have the special computer programs and the specialists in water distribution and storage and so on that would be needed.
May I give you an example of something that people normally wouldn't think about? But if you look at the water tower on Fern Road, that water tower has now been up 15 years, and it needs to be painted. Well, we don't just go down to Sears and buy paint that. Secondly, we have to drain the inside, and we want to make sure the inside that the tower doesn't rust and that the metal doesn't become fatigued. And so there's a thing called cathodic protection. And all of that is a technical balance of the electrodes and what's happening within the tank, the paint that's going to be on the inside of the tank, the paint's on the inside, because if we paint it, we want it to last another 15 years. And that's where we need the specialty of an engineer who's on the spot, knowing what paints have held up, what new technology has come along, and what's just sales pitch as opposed to real stuff. And that's one of the projects we have for 1986 is to get that tank painted so that it continues and it maintains itself and we won't ever have to replace it. But that's one of the reasons we use a firm like Hazen and Sawyer.
I think, just to amplify a little bit, I think even the largest cities have found that for the specialized projects, it usually ends up cheaper to hire a consulting engineer for the major projects and to keep people on their staff year in and year out to handle those projects. Years ago, it was more common in some of the large cities that very, very large engineering staffs that would do all their design work. But in recent times, most cities have gone to sort of a bare bone type of staff and hire the consultants as the projects arise.
I have a question about the funding on the pipeline. You've said that we're going to hold costs for 2 to possibly 3 years on the cost of the water, and this pipeline won't cost us anything additional. And you've also mentioned that the cost of the water that we'll be getting from Middlesex will be $70 cheaper, a million gallons or something. Is that the total cost of that pipeline? Will that be able to pay that pipeline then over the period? Is that how that's figured?
The pipeline costs $3 million, and a rule of thumb is that with interest factors, you would want to double that if we were to fund it over 25 years. So the pipeline, we're saying, is going to cost $6 million. Now, $6 million spread over an average daily use of 4 million gallons a day is what we really have to look at that and to see if that average use is going to go up because there's additional demands by some industries or some commercial development or even residential. And if that goes up and we don't have other cost increases, or we can economize by reducing staff, or we can economize by reducing electrical costs, our goal is to not see rates increase in the next 10 years. But I can confidently say, and the mayor has asked me to make sure that that occurs. I mean, that's one of the reasons he hires me, I think, is make sure that for 3 years that the rates don't go up. And we look at these things in blocks of time. 3 years ago the rate went up, and 3.5 years ago the rate went up, and we hope to hold it again. Now, because the line has a little excess capacity, we're going to try to sell some water to adjacent towns that have problems. And those towns are going to pay more than just cost. So they're going to help pay for that water line. And so, Paul, I think that I'd like to confidently say that it's going to be more than 3 years. But I can with confidence tell you that right now.
Yeah, the real pressure on cost in the water utility is not from capital expenditure. The real pressure is in the cost of chemicals, electricity, materials, and the various other things that it takes to operate. Labor is a big cost. And we did set the current rates with the idea of knowing that this pipeline was going to be constructed and projecting what we would need into the future. We don't want to have rate increases if we don't have to. The utility operates on a cost basis, and so there's no need for a profit as there would be with a private enterprise. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to preserve the rates for as long as possible. Well, it looks like we're at the end of our program. We could talk about water for a very long time. It's a fascinating subject and very complicated. I hope that in this program we've hit the highlights that are of interest to people. I hope that it's been informative and educational. Our next program next month will be dealing with a subject that may be currently of more interest to people even than water, and that is traffic in the township of East Brunswick and what's going to be done about it. I hope that if you're interested in that topic, you will volunteer to participate in our studio audience, and I look forward to seeing you at that time.